how you guys doing? How you guys doing? So in the overview of my article titled Love and Burnout, Caregivers Too Need Care, I looked at a personal story about Mark Donehams, and Mark's wife was Chris, and she had been diagnosed with the early onset of Alzheimer's. So with Mark being married, basically, he promised to care for his wife until death did them part, as they stated in the article. Mark ended up quitting his job as a sales representative and became his wife's 24-hour caregiver. So doing things like, for example, dressing her, doing laundry, making visits to see her friends, and then just like other things of nature around the house. So long story short, eventually Alzheimer's got worse in his wife's life, and she could eventually no longer recognize him anymore or like remember the basic things that they had once did when they were younger. So with Mark being in his 40s, this was ripping him apart in many ways, which I couldn't even imagine. And one day he landed in the emergency room because he thought he was having a heart attack. Turns out though, when he went to the emergency room, he found out what the doctor had told him, that due to the large amount of stress and just pressure he was going through, this is what caused him to have that heart attack. And due to him always caring for his wife and just the insane amount of energy it was exerting, it really took a toll on him. So eventually his wife passed away within like a year after this accident. He later joined a support group to help deal with stress that helped him, which allowed him to work on many things, both personally and just relieve some things. So one thing that I see that relates to class that they mentioned in this article is how caregivers needed to be overlooked as well, because they don't necessarily put themselves first. And I can see this making sense because as a caregiver, I mean, for him, as being a 24-hour caregiver, his only job was to support his wife and make sure everything she had was okay and that she was just personally, okay. So, as you can see, this burns out not only their immune system, but mentally. So, some things that I felt connected to class was ideas like the collaborative communication model, which in a situation like this could possibly work. Because in this model, for example, Mark could have worked in different ways to support his wife to reduce the drag of the same routine every day. Another way I think this ties in from class is how caregivers have overwhelming responsibilities, which in his case, he was doing literally everything for his wife and her friends, which the teacher touched in her lecture PowerPoint. So, because this could be insane amount of energy that's exerted as well. Another thing this ties into from class is how caregivers have overwhelming responsibilities, which in his case, he was literally doing everything for his wife and everything for her friends, basically setting up appointments and stuff of that nature. And this is something Dupree talked about in the readings as a stress was related to things like intense emotions and excessive workloads, which for him, he was basically doing everything physical and caring for her in many ways that we probably can't even imagine. So personally, I believe that this is just as important for these caregivers to receive help and support due to the insane amount of pressure and physical activities they are put in. So a few discussion questions, not even a few, just one discussion question I have for you guys just to think about and to really try to get back to me about is, what do you think is the best way for caregivers to receive support, both mentally and physically? And if so, and how could this properly be achieved if they don't talk about themselves as much, as most caregivers don't really want to make the situation about them with the people they're caring about? So yeah, thank you guys.